Hello humans, my name is Kenyo, Overlord, and tell me, do you want to train your own custom model of Stable Diffusion with your own images using Dreambooth? Well, in this video I'm gonna show you how you can get results like these in only 10 minutes of training. So without wasting too much time, let's go. Alright, so before we begin, I need to tell you a little story. You see, this video took me around 2 weeks to make. And the reason why is that back in November, I made a similar video showing you how you can train your custom model of Stable Diffusion using the Dreambooth extension in Automatic 11.11. And back in November, this extension worked perfectly well. It was fast, easy to use, and with great results. So when people ask me to make a new video about the updated extension, I obliged. But unfortunately, the first few days that I tried this updated extension, no matter what I did, I could not get even decent results. Even when using the exact same images that I used in the previous versions, with the exact same parameters, no matter what I did, I would always have terrible results. I even used the parameters in other tutorials to see what I did wrong, but no matter what I tried, I would always get worse results compared to the older version of the extension. And multiple people also had the exact same problems, as you can see right here. With the same exact parameters, the older version worked way better. Moreover, the updated extension was way more difficult to use compared to the older one. And it's only when I joined the Discord server of the Dreambooth extension that someone told me that the main branch has been broken for weeks, meaning that I had to use another version of the extension to get good results. Now obviously this is absolutely not a critique to the developer of this extension. I would say that a lot of the blame lies a lot of Automatic 11.11 that constantly pushes new random updates without telling anyone, breaking a lot of the extensions made for Automatic 11.11 completely obsolete. Now obviously all these people are absolutely amazing, they're doing an amazing job, and all of that for free. So complaining about work done for free is really not nice. Now unfortunately, since things move so fast in the AI space, maybe that by the time that you watch this video, the extension would have changed again, either for the better or for the worse. That also means that if you want to follow along this video, you might need to revert to a previous version of the extension. And since I know that for some of you this might be a little too complicated, don't worry because I have a solution for all of you. Because for this video, I've prepared for you 2 different archives. In each one of these archives actually contain the entire Stable Diffusion folder with the current and older version of the Dreambooth extension. That's right, meaning that right now it doesn't matter when you're watching this video. If you use one of those archives, you will always be able to follow along this video. And if one day an update breaks the extension, or the developers start working on it, you will always be able to use this offline on your computer. So in this video, not only I'm gonna show you how you can train your own model of Stable Diffusion using the older Dreambooth version, but also the current Dreambooth version. The older Dreambooth version is way easier to use and faster to train, but unfortunately it does not support the 2.0 or the 2.1 models, and also don't work as well with custom models, whereas the new version is a little bit more complex to use, but it will allow you to train any model that you want. So what I'm gonna show you right now is how you can use these 2 archives automatically, and also how you can revert back to those versions if you made a mistake. So what you're gonna do now is click the link in the description down below, and you're either gonna download the old or the new archive, or both, onto your computer. So once you have these 2 archives, you're gonna extract them using WinRAR. So you're gonna right click and then click on extract. And then here you're gonna have these 2 folders, the new and the old one. Now inside one of these folders, you will see 3 folders and 2 text documents. So the requirements Dreambooth folder will contain the requirements.txt file that you need to use inside the Dreambooth extension folder. And this is just a copy of the file that is already inside the Stable Diffusion Web UI folder. And it's the same for the requirements Web UI. This is a copy of the 2 requirements file that is already inside the Stable Diffusion Web UI folder. These 2 folders are just here in case you make a bad manipulation. And then you're gonna have 2 text files, the Dreambooth commit and the Web UI commit, which basically gives you the reference of the commit used for the extension. Meaning that if again you make a bad manipulation, meaning that you can use this reference to go back to this commit, and I'm gonna show you how. And finally, you have the Stable Diffusion Web UI folder. Now inside is basically the normal Stable Diffusion Web UI folder that you all know and love, with the 2 requirements file already inside, so you don't need to do anything. And then in extensions, you have already the Dreambooth extension installed, with again the right requirements.txt file. And let's say for example that you delete this folder or that you have to reinstall this extension for some reason and you need to go back to this version of Dreambooth. All you need to do is just come here, click on the folder URL, type cmd, press enter, and here you're gonna type git checkout and then paste the commit number that we copied from the text file and then press enter. And what this will do is that this will basically revert back to this version of the extension. And again, same thing with the Stable Diffusion Web UI folder. You're just gonna come here, Web UI comment, take this number, Ctrl C to copy it, go inside Stable Diffusion Web UI, click on the folder URL, type cmd, press enter, type git checkout, and then paste the commit number, and then press enter. And this will revert back to this version of the Stable Diffusion Web UI. Now this was just in case something goes wrong. If you, for example, delete something or something doesn't work, you can actually do that manually and get to that version of Stable Diffusion. But technically everything should work right out of the gate. The only thing that you need to do is just extract the archive, go inside the folder, go inside Stable Diffusion Web UI, inside Models, Stable Diffusion, and then put here a model of Stable Diffusion. If you're using the old archive, you need to put the 1.5, because the 2.0 and the 2.1 will not work with this version. And once you've put the model of Stable Diffusion, all you have to do is just double click on the WebUI user.bat. It will launch Stable Diffusion and recreate a VNV folder. And then we can finally start the training. And once you've launched Stable Diffusion, you should have now a Dreambooth tab. Now as you can see here, this is the older version of the Dreambooth extension, which is way simpler and way easier and faster to use than the newest version. Now if for some reason you don't have this Dreambooth tab, you're gonna have to come here in Extensions, click on Available, then click on Load From, then here look for Dreambooth, and then click on Install. Now of course in my case it is already installed, but for you it might take a few seconds. Once it is installed, you're gonna come here in Installed and then click on Apply and Restart UI. But then you should also restart completely Stable Diffusion, otherwise the tab will not appear. And then as I said earlier, you need to go back to the Extensions tab, SD Dreambooth extension, and then revert back to the version that you see right here, as I showed you earlier. Now if everything goes well, you shouldn't actually have to do anything. The Dreambooth extension should be installed and you should have the Dreambooth tab already present. Now before we begin the training, you need to choose a subject that you want to train. Now exactly like in my previous video where I show you how you can train a textual inversion embedding, the exact same advice applies here for Dreambooth. You need to have a good variation of images that are of high quality and that are not pixelated. Make sure that you choose the best, most varied and high resolution images possible. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because I've already done it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should definitely check out my previous video on training textual inversion embeddings. And then of course do not forget to resize your images into a square format, 512 by 512 resolution, and then put them into a folder. Now a little advice, make sure that in this folder you only have images of your subject. For some reason, if you have other files inside, the Dreambooth extension sometimes count them as images. So make sure that in this folder you only have images of your subject and nothing else. And now finally we can start the training. Now first I'm gonna show you how you can use the older version of the Dreambooth extension, and then I'm gonna show you how you can do the exact same thing in the newest version. Also, I'm not saying that this is the best way to do it, that these are the best parameters, but these are the parameters that work for me and for all the models that I did previously. They usually produce really good models in only 10 to 15 minutes of training, so that's pretty impressive. Now obviously if you want to use the Dreambooth extension, you need to have a good enough GPU, and usually this training takes me between 12 and 13 gigabytes of VRAM. So you need to have at least this much VRAM to be able to use this extension correctly. So what you're gonna do now is choose a name for your model. It doesn't really matter when you choose, just make sure that you remember what kind of parameters you chose. So the way I do it now is that I make sure that I know which version of the Dreambooth extension I'm using. So if I'm using the old version, I'm gonna start by old. This way I know that this is the old version. Then I'm gonna input the name of my character. Now in my case it's Wednesday Adams, so I'm just gonna put Adams, and then here I'm gonna use the instance in the class prompt used for the training. So in this case I know that I'm gonna be using OHWX person. I'm gonna show you why later. Then for the source checkpoint, you're gonna choose here the 1.5 pruned, leave the scheduler at the DIM, and then click on create. And there you go, as you can see it has created a brand new empty model. And you're gonna come here and choose the model that we just created. So in my case, it's Old Adams OHWX person. Then you're gonna click on the train model tab, and here you're gonna see a bunch of options. But don't worry, because in the old version of the extension there isn't that much that you need to change. Now the concepts list, you're gonna leave it on default, you're gonna leave it empty, you don't need to touch that. Now for the instance prompt, here you're gonna put what exactly are your sample images supposed to represent, and also how you're gonna name your character. So in my case, for example, you can see here that I'm trying to train photos of Wednesday Addams. Wednesday Addams is a person, so here for the instance prompt you're gonna put photo of OHWX person. Now the reason why we use OHWX, you don't need to use it of course, you can use something else, but you need to make sure that this is a name that Stable Diffusion does not know. Because if instead you put Tom Cruise, that's not gonna work, because it's gonna mix and match images of the real Tom Cruise. So instead here you want to put a name that Stable Diffusion does not know. And a good name for that is simply OHWX. Simple as that. And then person, of course, is, well, since it is a person, and we are going to be using regularization images of a person, we're going to use the word person in the instance prompt. Now, of course, if you were training something else, like a dog for example, you would want to replace person by dog. Same if you want to train a style. Just replace person by style. Then here you're gonna leave everything empty. Then for the class prompt, here you're just gonna put what your sample images are. In my case, it's simply a photo of a person. Again, if this was a dog for example, you could put photo of a dog or something else, as long as this match your instance prompt. Now the dataset directory is where your sample images are. Now in my case they are right here, so I'm just gonna copy the folder URL and then paste it right here. Now for the classification dataset directory, this is the folder where you have your regularization images, and you can either download them from the GitHub repository, I will put a link to the command down in the description down below, or you can just generate them yourself. And it's usually better to generate them yourself, especially if you are training a custom model, but if you are training on the base 1.5, you can simply use those regularization images that are in my GitHub. This will work perfectly fine. Now for me, the regularization images folder is right here. There are 1500 images, but of course you don't really need that much. Just make sure that you have at least 10 times the amount of sample images. So if you have 10 images, you need at least 100 regularization images. If you have 20, you need 200. If you have 30, you need at least 300. And you need these regularization images to make sure that you don't overfit the model. But as I said, if you are training on the base 1.5, you can simply download this folder and use these images for the training. So I'm just gonna copy the folder URL and paste it right here. Then, total number of classification images to use. So as I said, it depends on the amount of images that you have. So if you have 10 sample images, you need 100. So just make sure that if you are generating those images yourself, make sure that you multiply by 10 the amount of sample images that you have. But in our case, since we have already 1500 images that are already done, might as well use all of them. So here I'm just gonna put 1500. Now for the training steps, you're also gonna put 1500. It should be more than enough for what we need. For the batch size and class batch size, you're gonna leave at 1 by default. For the learning rate, you want to change from 5 to 1. This way you will have a very flexible model. I've trained with different learning rates, and by far the 0.000001 is the best. Now here, set a checkpoint at every end steps and generate a preview image every end steps. Here you can leave it at 500, but you might want to generate a preview image every 50 steps. This way you can clearly see the evolution of the training and make sure that the model is not overtrained. But don't worry, because usually with 1500 training steps and with this amount of learning rate, the model should not be overtrained. Now for the preview image prompt, here what I advise you to do is to put a prompt that will clearly show you if the model is still flexible. Now for example, if you put photo of OHWX person, red hair, this will generate every 50 steps an image using that prompt. And to make sure that the model is not overtrained, you need to make sure that your character is always generated with red hair. If after a while you don't have red hair anymore, that means that the model is overtrained and not flexible anymore. Let's say for example that with 1000 training steps, your characters still have red hair, but by the time that we reach a training step of 1500 and the character generated only has black hair, that means that we overtrained our model. meaning that if we want our subject to be stylized, we cannot do that anymore. That means that we need to end the training at 1000 training steps. But as I said, this is just an example. As I said, with only 1500 training steps and with this amount of learning rate, you should never have a model that is overtrained. So here you're gonna leave everything by default. Then in the advanced section, you're gonna leave everything here by default, but you're gonna check use 8-bit Adam. That will reduce the VRAM used. And then in mixed precision, you're gonna choose from no to FP16. And then everything that you see after that, you should leave it by default. And guess what? We are now completely done. Because now all you need to do is just click on the train button. And it will then start the training. And as you can see, with 1500 steps, all you need is around 12 to 13 minutes of training, which is really super fast. And as you can see, the amount of VRAM used currently is around 12.5 gigabytes. So you need to have at least 12 to 13 gigabytes to be able to run this extension. And now to check out our progress, you need to go into the models folder, Dreambooth, then choose the name of our model, logging, and you can see right here the evolution of our training. As you can see right here, every 50 step, it generates an image of our character with red hair. And as I said, you need to make sure that the character still has red hair in these images right here, because otherwise that means that the model is start to get overtrained. Now I'm gonna stop the training because I've already done it multiple times, but the principle is always the exact same, with the exact same parameters. And then once the training is done, you're gonna choose here your model. In the prompt, you're gonna input photo of OHWX person, choose your sampling steps, and then click on generate. And as you can see, this is the final result. And it's looking really good. And all of that in around 10 minutes of training, which is just fantastic. Dreambooth is definitely a little bit more powerful than textual inversion embeddings. And with this old version of the extension, training a model becomes very easy and very fast. And as I said, this older version of the extension is great, but unfortunately you cannot train the 2.0 or the 2.1 model. And even some custom models, like the Protogen model, does not work. But don't worry, because for that, we can use the new version of the extension. And exactly as I showed you previously with the old version of the Stable Diffusion folder, this new version of the folder works the exact same way. Just go to Models, Stable Diffusion, put here a version of Stable Diffusion, then go back to the Stable Diffusion Web UI and double click on the Web UI user.bat file, which will then create a VNV folder. And now let's do the exact same thing, but now with the new version of the Dreambooth extension. If you click on the Dreambooth tab, you can see that it is very different from what we just saw. We have way more tabs, way more options, and everything is just way more complicated. But this version allows you to train any models that you want, including the 2.0, the 2.1, or the Protogen models. Absolutely everything. For this example, we're actually going to be using the Protogen v2.2 as a base. So here, for the name, as I said previously, since we are using the newest version of the Dreambooth extension, I'm gonna write new, then the name of the model that we're gonna be using. So we are gonna be using Protogen, so I'm gonna put Protogen 2, then the name of my character, which is Adams, and then the name of my token and the class. And this will be like the other one, OHWX person. Then in the source checkpoint, you're gonna choose the Protogen v2.2, you're gonna leave everything else by default, and then you're gonna click on Create Model. And there you go, it has created an empty model. Then you're gonna click on Settings, and here again you're gonna see a bunch of options. Very similar to the one we saw in the previous Dreambooth extension version. So here you're gonna leave everything else by default. If you want to use LoRa, which is kinda like Dreambooth Lite, which uses less VRAM but is also not as good as Dreambooth, you can use this option. And then here, in the LoRa unit learning rate, you're gonna put it 4, 5. And these are the only thing that you need to change if you're gonna be using the LoRa training. But to be honest, if I were you, I will not use this option because it is definitely not as good as Dreambooth. Now here, you can see that now, instead of the training steps, we have here training steps per image. So this number will depend to the number of images that you have. So if you want 1500 steps and you have 11 images like me, for the training step per image, you're gonna have to put something like 136. It's not gonna be exactly 1500, but it's gonna be close enough. Then for the pose and amount, you're gonna leave it at 0. Here, for the save model frequency, if like the other one you only want 3 models saved during the training, for 136 training steps, you're gonna put here 45. And for the save preview frequencies, you're gonna leave it at 5. The preview images don't take too much space anyway. For the batching, you're gonna leave absolutely everything by default, but for the learning rate, you want to change from constant with warm-up to constant. And the learning rate, you're gonna change the 2 to a 1. Here, the constant linear starting factor, you're gonna change it to 1, and the scale positioned to also 1. Then you're gonna scroll down, and here for the sanity sample prompt, you're gonna use the exact same prompt that we used the last time, which was photo of OHWX person red hair. And this will act exactly like our preview images. If the generated character start to not have red hair anymore, that means that the model is overtrained. The miscellaneous section, you're gonna leave everything by default. Here, in the advanced section, you're gonna check use EMA, use 8-bit Atom. For the mixed precision, you're gonna choose FP16, memory attention X-formers. You're gonna uncheck cache latents, and then uncheck shuffle tags. And you can leave everything else by default. Then you're gonna scroll up and then click on concepts. And here what's really great with the newest version of the Dreambooth extension is that you can train up to 3 concepts at a time, meaning that you can train up to 3 different person in one single training. Now for this example, I'm only gonna be training 1, but all the parameters that I'm gonna be using here can be used for any other concept. Now the dataset directory, just like the other one, is where your sample images are. So in my case, they are right here. So I'm just gonna copy and paste that folder URL. The classification dataset directory is where your regularization images are. So just like the other one, they're right here. So copy and paste. Here for the file words, we're not gonna be using that. So you can just leave them empty. For the instance prompt, just like the other one, you're gonna put photo of OHWX person. For the class prompt, just like the other one, you're gonna put photo of a person. For the sample image prompt, I recommend copy and pasting the instance prompt right here, because although it says that if you leave empty, it's gonna use the one here, sometimes for some reason it doesn't do that. So just copy and paste what you see right here in the instance prompt. Then you're gonna leave everything empty, and you're gonna leave everything else by default. Then in saving, you're gonna check this box right here, and leave everything else unchecked. And now we are basically done. All we need to do now is just click train to start the training. And as you can see, the training has finally started. And just like the other one, 1500 steps gives you around 12 minutes of training, which is really super cool. Now obviously I'm not gonna do it again because I've already done it previously, so I'm just gonna cancel the training. And now once the training is complete, you're gonna see here a bunch of models, and you want to choose the one with the highest number. So in my case it's 1496. And since this is a model trained on the Protogen model, we're gonna be using some of the Protogen prompts that I used in my previous video. And just here, do not forget to put the token and the class prompt. And in our case, it was OHWX person. And then click on generate. And this is the final result, which looks really cool. And we have now trained a new character with the Protogen model as the base. But here's a little trick for you, which is really cool. You can also use the custom Dreambooth model in combination of the textual inversion embeddings. If you remember correctly, in my previous video, I also trained a custom textual inversion embedding on the character of Wednesday Addams. So now, if I want to use this custom textual inversion embedding, I'm just gonna leave everything the same, but I'm just gonna add this little text, which will basically use the textual inversion embeddings trained at 2000 steps, and if I click on generate, it gives me this fantastic image, which look absolutely gorgeous. So this is the before, just the base Dreambooth version without textual inversion, and this is with the textual inversion embedding applied. So as you can see, you can use a custom Dreambooth model in combination of a custom textual inversion embedding, and all of that to create even better images, which makes this super powerful. Also, if you're interested in training with the 2.1 model as a base, it's pretty much the exact same thing, but make sure that first you create a model using the 2.1 as a source checkpoint right here, and that you choose the non-EMA version, because this is the model that you need to use for training. Then make sure that here in image processing the resolution should be 768, and in concepts do not forget that your sample images need to be at a 768 by 768 resolution, and that your regularization images should also be at that resolution. But otherwise, for the rest, it will be the exact same thing. And as you can see, this is an image generated with the 2.1 model. It works pretty well, but maybe not as well as other models based on the 1.5. So if you want to train a model, I definitely recommend using the 1.5 instead of the 2.1. And there you have it, folks. Now you can train your own model of Stable Diffusion using 2 versions of the Dreambooth extension. And thanks to these 2 archives, it doesn't matter when you're watching this video, this should always work. And there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.